precisely, the Republic of China once claimed sovereignty over a territory exceeding 11 million square kilometers. This included the territories of China, Mongolia, and Russia. So, how did Taiwan historically belong to the Han people? Why did this island claim sovereignty over such a vast territory? This video, let the process of Han Chinese expansion into in the past, the Han Chinese weren't particularly interested in offshore islands. For a long time, the Penghu Islands and Taiwan Island remained inhabited by Austronesian. It wasn't until 1171 that the Song dynasty began migrating people to the Penghu Islands. However, it was only in 1281, when the Yuan dynasty established the Penghu Patrol and Inspection Office, that the archipelago. Yet, in 1384, the Ming dynasty ordered residents to leave Penghu due to its maritime prohibition policy. It wasn't until 1563 that people were allowed to return to the archipelago. However, in 1622, two Dutch warships with 1,024 soldiers attacked and captured Penghu. 2 years later, the Ming dynasty recaptured the archipelago and stationed 3,000 troops there. Immediately, the Dutch shifted their target to Taiwan Island and established a training base there, simultaneously importing Han laborers from Fujian and Penghu. These were the first Han Chinese to appear on Taiwan Island. Also around this time, specifically in 1626, the Spanish occupied northern Taiwan and set up a trading post there. However, 16 years later, they were expelled by the Dutch. By 1644, when the Manchus began invading China proper, the former Ming royalist, Koxinga, Zhang Chegai, led his forces to Taiwan in 1661, defeated the Dutch, and established the Kingdom of Penghu. However, this kingdom lasted only 22 years, as in 1683, the Qing Navy, led by Xi Lang, crossed the sea to attack Penghu and Taiwan. From then on, the island became part of China's territory for over 200 years. In 1895, after losing the war to Japan, the Qing dynasty had to cede Taiwan and Penghu to Japan. Initially, the island's inhabitants fiercely resisted the colonial government, with 14,000 people dying in the first. However, after stabilizing the situation, the Japanese began building infrastructure such as running water, electricity, roads, railways, healthcare, and education. It also encouraged Taiwanese farmers to grow sugarcane and rice, while exploiting the island's natural resources on a large scale to meet Taiwan under the Republic of China. In 1945, when World War II ended, Japan, having been defeated, had to return the lands it had occupied, including Taiwan and Penghu, to the Republic of China. At this time, Chiang Kai-shek set Chen Yi, a trusted subordinate, as the Governor-General of Taiwan. Key economic sectors fell into the hands of Chen Yi's relatives, while he also confiscated about 500 factories and mines owned by the Japanese, as well as the personal assets of those who had. As poor economic management led to production disruptions, worker unemployment, and especially sharp price increases for many essential goods. At this very moment, police cracked down on a cigarette smuggling operation and shot 2 people dead. As a result, protests erupted across the island as people were Tensions peaked on February 28, 1947, when soldiers opened fire on protesters. Consequently, the people of Taiwan rose up in struggle, but their uprising was brutally suppressed in a bloodbath, with approximately 18,000 to 28. The February 28 incident forced the Kuomintang to make changes. They established a new government with 32 people, including intellectuals, students, factory owners, and workers, to temporarily administer Taiwan. Meanwhile, on the mainland, the Kuomintang situation was much worse. They were losing battles to the Communist Party, and Chiang Kai-shek needed a place to retreat. At that time, there were 2 choices, Taiwan Island and Hainan. Among them, Taiwan was farther from the mainland than Hainan, had a much more developed industry, and was closer to Japan, the Philippines, and Guam, meaning closer to the US and its allies. Ultimately, Chiang Kai-shek decided to relocate to Taiwan Island, turning it into a base to counterattack the mainland, while building important strongholds such as Kinmen, Matsu, Yijiangshan, and An. S. Liberation Army to prepare plans to land on Taiwan Island, aiming to destroy Chiang Kai-shek. On October 25, 1949, Mao Zedong ordered a surprise attack on the Kinmen Islands, located just 7 kilometers from the mainland coast. The People's Liberation Army landed on Kinmen from the Fujian coast in the Daejeon Islands that were ultimately, while the Kuomintang side had 1,267 dead and 1,982 wounded. The communist side suffered much heavier losses, with 3,873 dead and 5. Despite the failure at Kinmen, due to the island's importance, Mao Zedong remained determined to capture Taiwan, preparing an attack with 500,000 troops. Meanwhile, bad news happened for Chiang Kai-shek. For instance, on January 5, 1950, President Harry Truman announced the U.S. policy towards Taiwan, recognizing the island as part of China's territory. Though in dire straits, at this moment, Chiang Kai-shek caught a lucky break when the Korean War broke out. Specifically, on June 25, 1950, Kim Il-sung sent troops across the 38th parallel to attack the Republic of Korea government. Immediately, the U.S. dispatched troops and provided aid to South Korea, while outlining a three-point response. First, instructing General Douglas MacArthur to supply weapons to the South Korean Army. Second, organizing bombing raids on North Korean forces as U.S. soldiers withdrew from. And third, sending the 7th Fleet from the Philippines northward to prevent China from attacking Taiwan. This third point was added because Truman accepted MacArthur's opinion, as the experienced general recognized Taiwan as a U.S. defensive line in the Pacific. Forming an arc from the Aleutian Islands to Japan, from Okinawa to the Philippines, the island could also become an unsinkable aircraft carrier. Meanwhile, on the Korean battlefield, U.S. and Allied forces pushed back the Northern Army and gradually crossed the 38th parallel. As government collapsed, the U.S. would establish bases right next to China. Fearing this scenario, Mao Zedong was forced to shelve the plan to capture Taiwan and instead sent millions of volunteer troops to the Korean. By July 27, 1953, when the U.S. and North Korea signed the Armistice Agreement, a total of 2,970,000 Chinese, with 183,108 dead and 25,621 missing. Among those killed was Mao Anying, Mao Zedong's eldest son. Taiwan Strait crisis. After retreating from the mainland, the Republic of China government still controlled Taiwan Island, as well as some islands close to the mainland coast, including the Kinmen Islands, Lechu, and Matsu off the Fujian coast. In Zhejiang, the Republic of China controlled more archipelagos, including Daoji, Yijiashan, Dahan, Yushan, Liangshan. First Taiwan Strait crisis. Shortly after the Korean War ended, Mao Zedong believed it was time to resolve the Taiwan issue, and prepared for an attack on the islands in the area. On March 18, 1954, mainland forces from the Korean front were deployed to eastern Zhejiang, and began attacking the Dongji Islands. By early July 1954, the liberation forces had taken control of the entire archipelago. Immediately, the Kuomintang faction reinforced 58,000 troops in Kinmen and 15,000 to guard against the mainland attack. By September 3, 1954, 14 artillery pieces of the mainland fired approximately 6,000 shells at the Kinmen archipelago within 5 hours. This artillery bombardment resulted in the deaths of 2 American. In retaliation, 3 aircraft carriers, 1 cruiser, and 3 destroyers from the U.S. 7th Fleet appeared in the Taiwan. By September 7, the Kuomintang faction counterattacked with 7-6 aircraft attacking coastal targets, destroying 5 of the mainland's 14. Faced with a tense situation, the U.S. Joint Chiefs of Staff proposed using nuclear weapons against China, but President Eisenhower disagreed with using nuclear weapons or deploying U.S. troops to directly participate in the conflict. Instead, the U.S. signed a mutual defense treaty with the Republic of China on December 2, 1954. However, the U.S. only committed to defend, and if offshore archipelagos near the mainland coast such as Matsu and Dahan were attacked, the U.S. would not engage. After shelling the Kinmen archipelago, the mainland unexpectedly shifted foot. Specifically, in January 1955, liberation forces from the islands of Dianao, Kiayutan, conducted a landing on Yijiashan Island. After just 3 days of fighting, the Kuomintang army had to surrender. Losing the important northern outposts, the Dahan archipelago faced the risk of attack. After many discussions, Taipei decided to withdraw from the islands off the coast to preserve forces, as these islands were farther from Taiwan compared to those in Fujian. To carry out the evacuation, Washington mobilized 132 warships to execute Operation King Kong, moving 14,500 civilians, 14,000 Republic of China government officials and soldiers, along with 40,000 tons of military equipment and supplies. Second Taiwan Strait crisis. Although tensions between the mainland and the US and Taiwan eased after capturing all the islands off Zhejiang, Mao Zedong still wanted to eliminate the Republic of China. Therefore, in 1955 and 1956, railways, roads, and 6 airports were successfully completed in Fujian. The mainland also built sea embankments and constructed fortresses in areas near Kinmen Island. In 1956, China successfully manufactured the J-5 fighter jet, based on the Soviet MiG-7. By 1958, Mao Zedong launched the Great Leap Forward plan, aiming to rapidly transform mainland China from a backward agricultural economy, primarily relying on peasants, into an industrialized, modernized national.
Capturing Kinmen, or even Taiwan, would be the perfect starting step.
Therefore, on August 23, 1958, the mainland began shelling Kinmen. The Taiwanese military was caught off guard at the time, but they quickly regained their fighting spirit, thanks to support from the US Navy. During the initial shelling period, warships and aircraft from both sides clashed multiple times. By October 1958, the mainland side announced the end of the artillery blockade of Kinmen. Switching to firing on odd days and resting on even days gradually reduced, but it wasn't until 20 years later, on January 1, 1979, when China, the mainland, and the US established diplomatic relations, that the shelling of Kinmen completely ceased. Throughout that period, a total of 480,000 artillery shells from Fujian were fired at Kinmen.
Today, the island is famous for producing Kinmen knives,
a type of kitchen tool made from the shell casings of mainland artillery. After more than 15 years of peace, tensions escalated again on June 9, 1995, when Republic of China President Lee Teng-hui called for Taiwan's independence. About a month later, the Liberation Army conducted military exercises near Taiwan and carried out a series of missile tests in response to this call.
In response to these exercises, in December 1995,
U.S. President Bill Clinton ordered the USS Nimitz Harrier Strike Group to sail through the Taiwan Strait and stationed the USS Independence Harrier Strike Group in the area east of the island. This was the largest display of U.S. military power in Asia since the Vietnam War. By early 1996, when tensions seemed to ease, U.S. forces withdrew from the area. However, the situation heated up again as Taiwan prepared for its presidential election. At this point, Beijing issued warnings that if Lee Teng-hui were elected, he would launch a war. About 2 weeks before the voting day, the mainland's military continuously fired missiles into the sea,
an area only 40 to 56 kilometers from the city.
In response, the Clinton administration once again dispatched the USS Independence Harrier and the USS Nimitz Harrier Strike Group back to the area. Thus, when Lee Teng-hui was elected, the mainland did not dare to attack Taiwan. That is the story from 30 years ago. Currently, China is strengthening its naval power with 370 surface ships and submarines. Among them are 3 aircraft carriers, Liaoning, Shandong. China's ambition for unification remains strong, and a war in the Taiwan Strait is very likely to occur in the near future. Mainland territory exceeds 11 million square kilometers. At present, the Republic of China government controls a territory of 36,190, including Taiwan Island, the Penghu Archipelago, and the archipelagos along the mainland coast, Kinmen, Lopshu, and Mons. However, for a long time, the Republic of China has claimed sovereignty over all belonging to the Qing dynasty in 1912, specifically all of China proper, Outer Mongolia. Additionally, there are 3 disputed areas, Lhasa and North Kachin in India and British Burma, as well as the Pamir Plateau in Central Asia. Therefore, the Republic of China government does not recognize the independence of
However, they could not do much as these 2 new countries were protected by European powers.
Specifically, Russia protected the Great Han Mongolia, while separating the Uryankai region to establish the Tuva. Today, it is the Republic of Tuva. Because Tsar Nicholas II wanted to create a buffer zone between China and Russia, better protecting the Trans-Siberian, connecting the most important cities, St. Petersburg and Moscow, with the Pacific port of Vladivostok. Tibet ceded the southern Tibetan region to British India, which is now the state of Arunachal Pradesh. In return, the British Empire had to recognize Tibet as an independent country. Similar to the Russians, the British also wanted to establish a buffer zone to protect India, their most important colony. Tibet's independence would provide the Yellow River region with a solid defensive layer in the northeast. After World War II ended in 1945, the Chinese Civil War between the nationalists. As a result, the nationalist faction lost and had to flee to Taiwan.
As Republic of China recognized Mongolia.
Conversely, in the southwest, the new mainland government quickly occupied Tibet in 1951. Subsequently, the People's Republic of China government renegotiated border agreements with neighboring countries. At this time, all border treaties were criticized by the Republic of China government and considered acts of treason.
First was Myanmar in 1960.
Accordingly, China would abandon its sovereignty claim over the northern part of Kachin State. While recognizing the 220 square kilometer Nanwan area as officially, in return, China received the Banong and Banlao areas, along with 3 towns, Pingla, Hulon, and Gangpong. 2 years later, in 1962, China and North Korea conducted border negotiations. The two sides divided Mount Chonbai, and Helen Lake on the summit was also split, with North Korea taking 54%
and China taking 45.5%.
Just 1 year later, in 1963, China declared the abandonment of its sovereignty claim over Afghanistan's Lakan corridor. By 1991, the Soviet Union was weakening and forced to renegotiate the border, ceding 700 islands to China. With a total area of approximately 7, in return, China also abandoned sovereignty over 64 Zhangdong villages, which had been occupied by the Russians. By 1998, China and Kazakhstan negotiated their border, whereby China received 407 square kilometers. Out of a total of 944 square kilometers of this. At the same time, Taiwan's political scene saw a major turning point when the Democratic Progressive Party first came to power. When Chen Shui-bian was elected president later in 2002, he recognized the independence of Outer Mongolia, meaning abandoning sovereignty claims over Mongolia and Russia's. But just 2 years later, Taiwan again criticized Beijing for ceding land to. Specifically in 2004, Russia transferred more than half of Hokkaido Island, amounting to 35.5 square kilometers, along with Yalong Island and part of Heishiazi Island with an area of 174 square kilometers. In return, China abandoned sovereignty over the remaining part of Heishiazi. Chinese nationalists in Taiwan argue that the Beijing government had permanently lost national territory. By 2009, Kyrgyzstan and China signed a new agreement. Accordingly, China abandoned its sovereignty claim over 30 square kilometers around Category Mountain. In return, they received 9 square kilometers in the Yushoguk River area. In 2011, Tajikistan ceded 1,158 square kilometers of land in the Sarakal Mountain. However, this only accounted for 4% of the territory China claimed in the All these actions made Beijing a target of criticism from Taiwan. However, border negotiations helped China reduce the number of disputes. Currently, the country only has land disputes with India and Bhutan. Meanwhile, Taiwan still maintains sovereignty claims over North Korea,
Russia, Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, Afghanistan, and Myanmar.
Before abandoning Outer Mongolia in 2002, the Republic of China's map had territory up to 11.5 million square kilometers, including the mainland, Taiwan, Mongolia, Russia's Republic of Tuva, and many other regions.
This map is quite similar to Beijing.
Not only on land but also at sea. First the mention of the Senkaku Islands administered by Japan. In fact, these islands are only 170 kilometers from Taiwan, but also very close to Yonaguni Island with a distance of only 150 kilometers. After World War II, the United States administered the Senkaku Islands and then transferred them to Japan, despite protests from the mainland of Taiwan. Additionally, China disputes the Socotra Rock with South Korea. It is located 149 kilometers southwest of South Korea's Murata and 271 kilometers from the Geopolitical island off the coast of Zhejiang. However, the Senkaku Islands and Socotra Rock are still very small. Compared to the ambitions of China and Taiwan in the South China, ambition to occupy the entire South. The 9-dash line, U-shaped line, or house tongue line are different names. but all refer to China's claim over about 80% of the South China Sea area. This line runs close to the coast of Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, and initially, this claim line had 11 drawn close to the coasts of Southeast Asian countries like Vietnam, the Philippines, Malaysia, Brunei, and Indonesia. This line was drawn by the Republic of China in 1947 without specific geographic coordinates. This government declared all islands within a U-shaped line as Chinese territory. After the People's Republic of China was established in 1949, it continued to use this act.
By 1953, to strengthen relations with Vietnam, Mao Zedong removed 2 dashes in the Gulf of Tonkin.
However, Chiang Kai-shek and the Republic of China government continued to use the 11-dash line. It includes all 5 major archipelagos and submerged. These are the Paracel Islands, Spratly Islands, Protes Islands, Macclesfield Bank, and Scarborough Shoal. The Paracel Islands have been Vietnamese territory since the 16th century, but since 1974, China has used force to seize these islands from the Republic of Vietnam and has controlled them to this day.
Meanwhile, Taiwan only claims sovereignty nominally without actual control.
The Spratly Islands were also under the control of the Nguyen lords since the 16th century. Currently, it is disputed by 6 parties: Vietnam, China, Taiwan, Philippines, Malaysia, and Brunei. Vietnam currently controls 7 coral islands and 14 coral reefs, totaling 21 geographical features, the most among the disputing parties. In addition, we also control 6 submerged banks located on the southern continent. These features are separated from the Spratly Islands by a deep trough. Currently, we have built economic, scientific, technical service clusters called VK1 platforms on them. Meanwhile, Taiwan has occupied Ituava Island since 1956 and Ban and Reef since 1995. Scarborough Shoal is a sovereignty dispute between the Philippines, China, and Taiwan.
In June 2012, the Beijing government seized this shoal from the Philippines.
The Protes Islands and Macclesfield Bank are territories disputed between Taiwan and mainland China, with each side controlling 1 feature. Beijing controls Macclesfield Bank, while Taipei holds the Protes Islands. In reality, the irrational 9-dash line appeared on Chinese maps since 1947.
But this country has never officially declared the international legal meaning of this dashed line.
Even in important legal documents of the People's Republic of China regarding maritime zones, this claim line is not mentioned. For example, the 1958 Declaration on the Territorial Sea, the 1992 Declaration on the the 1996 Declaration on the Baseline, the 1998 Declaration on the Exclusive Economic Zone. It wasn't until 1993 that the Republic of China government in Taiwan announced its South China Sea policy. They argue that the 9-dash line delimits historic waters, but by 2000, Chen Shui-bian of the Democratic Progressive Party was elected president. In 2002, he recognized independent diplomacy. Just 1 year later, in 2003, this president abolished the South China Sea policy. However, the Taiwan side has never declared the waters within the 9-dash line. Therefore, these waters can still be considered historic waters.
Until 2009 that the people.
They claimed sovereign rights and jurisdiction over the area inside the U-shaped line, equivalent to the status of exclusive economic zone and according to the 1982 United Nations Convention on the In 2013, China issued a new map with a 10-dash line.
The 10th dash was added east of Taiwan,
aiming to affirm this island as the 23rd province of the billion-person country. It can be seen that both governments across the Taiwan Strait have territorial ambitions. Among them, the mainland government has completed land border negotiations with while the Taiwan government does not accept the agreements signed by Beijing. Assuming the Republic of China counterattacks the mainland, then neighboring countries would have to renegotiate land borders with China.
This would be a nightmare for the Asian region.
And this is the dream of national restoration of the Taiwan government. If you want us to cover any topics next,
please leave comments below this video. Goodbye and see you in the next videos.